Good evening, everyone. It is a little bit late tonight, so I wanted to fulfill my purpose, I guess, or my intention rather, of coming on live every single day. And while technically it's Monday, it is just after midnight here in Austin, so I'm still counting this as Sunday. So I am 1 week into coming on every day and talking about different topics that have been requested by my friends within Facebook and in real life. And so tonight I want to talk about fear. So it's interesting that this is coming up for me because there was quite the resistance in speaking about this tonight. I was pretty afraid originally to come onto this platform and speak so openly and freely. And I realize now, after doing this for a few days, that this has been really transformational for me to come on and share myself with more people. But with that, there is this great fear that I've been experiencing of being seen, of being heard, of maybe not having an effect on people, putting effort into something that people aren't getting anything out of. So that has been really present for me this week. However, with all of those different fears that have been coming up for me, by continuing to show up, I have made some sort of impact for some people, because people have reached out to me almost every day since I started doing this, saying thank you for your videos, thank you for coming on and sharing your wisdom. And I'm really, really grateful that people are getting something out of this. So fear, how does fear affect your life? How does fear affect your decision making? How does fear hold you back from what you want in your life? Hold you back from who you are supposed to be in your life? How does fear really shape you? For me, fear has been it's a very tricky thing, but it's also really, it can be used in a way to kind of like fuel your mission and fuel what you're supposed to be doing. And whenever we face our fears like head on, in my experience at least, I find that I learned so much about myself, and I realized that it really, whatever it was that I was afraid of wasn't really necessary to be afraid of, because it really wasn't that big of a deal. And the outcome of conquering and facing that fear is typically really, really great. So I just wanted to kind of start this conversation with people and ask you, those of you that are watching right now, like, what is holding you back? Like, what are you afraid of in any situation in your life, whether that be your job or, relationships, or, maybe your purpose. Like, for me, it was scary trying to figure out like my purpose. I feel like I have these things that I agreed to do, and what if I get it wrong? That's been a really big thing for me most of my life, is like, what if this is wrong? What if I'm doing is not the right way? But what I've discovered is that by doing these different things, I'm able to have this experience and see the fruits of what I am actually doing, and how that is either helping me or helping others, and that's been really good. I wanted to tell a story about a fear that I faced, which is kind of a silly fear, but I feel like it's pretty metaphorical. So a few years ago, I was fortunate enough to go to Hawaii with a girlfriend of mine. And we went to this place called South Point on the Big Island of Hawaii, and it is the most southern point of the United States. And there's only open water in between that point and Antarctica. And when I went to this place, there was this huge cliff. It was probably about 50 feet high. And I am terrified of heights. I'm really afraid of heights. And I don't know why, but I am. And so at this place called South Point, there's this cliff, and it just like drops off down into the ocean. Well, what do people do at this cliff other than cliff dive? Of course, like that sounds like a great idea, you know, just like smacking down into the ocean. So we go to this place and we're watching, my friend Lada and I were watching these people just like, you know, go up to the edge and like, oh, think about it, and then, oh, am I gonna do it? And then finally they will jump. So it was mostly men. I don't think I saw one woman jump because, you know, no offense men, but we're smart. No, just kidding. But I do remember this one man who he has probably been jumping off of this cliff like his entire life. And he was so eloquent the way that he would like take off from this cliff, because there was like this big like metal, it was almost like a metal doorway structure that was built up on the side of this cliff, and he would climb up to the top of this structure, and he was probably like almost 60 feet up in the air at that point, and he would climb up on the top and he would stand there and he would do these like beautiful flips in the air, and it was just like it was like a ballet in the air that this man was doing. And then he would land into the water, and it was so graceful. And I just remember like watching him, and this anxiety and this fear building up inside of me of like, okay, this is your chance. Like, you may not ever come back to this place ever again. So if you're ever gonna do anything with your life, you have to jump off of this cliff. And I was so terrified. And there's actually a video of me jumping off of this cliff somewhere on Facebook that Lada took of me. But I remember standing at the cliff's edge and looking down. The wind is blowing. It's very, very windy at this place. And the wind is blowing, my hair is blowing, I'm like sunburned, I can like feel everything around me. There's a truck full of men behind me that are saying, jump, jump, jump. And I'm like, oh my God, now I have to jump. These guys are saying I have to jump. It was really scary. So I finally like go back and forth, and I'm like, all right, this is it. Like, I could die, but at least I died doing something that, you know, is fun, I guess. So I jump off this cliff, and I just really kind of like pencil down, and like my feet like hit the water first, and they like flopped up right in front of me. And so then it was basically like my butt was going down, and like I hit that water with quite a bit of force. And like I probably like, whenever I actually hit and went in, I had to have gone down at least like 20 to 30 feet. And so I'm like, oh my God, okay. So I start swimming up to the top, and I'm like, I can't breathe. It's hitting the water that hard, like knocked the wind out of me. And so I'm like going as fast as I can to the surface, and finally I get to the surface, and I'm like, and I'm breathing, and I'm just like trying to catch my bearings. And then all of a sudden I realize that the waves are taking me further and further and further away from the ladder that is dangling off the side of this cliff that I'm supposed to climb back up. So I'm like, okay, so I can either just like continue to catch my breath and potentially float off to Antarctica, or I can like get my shit together and paddle to this ladder. So I paddle, I like start swimming as fast as I could, and I finally like make it to the ladder, and I like hold on to the ladder for dear life. And I'm just like catching my breath, and I remember like wrapping my legs around this ladder. And I mean, this is like an old rusty ladder that it's super old. I mean, it was very rusty, and obviously, you know, like sea salt and air like makes things rust faster, but it was so rickety. And I was like, wow, I know that other people have climbed up this ladder today, but hopefully my completely out of shape ass can climb up this ladder. And it's like going like this as I'm holding on to it. So I finally catch my breath, and I start to ascend up this ladder. And I just remember like wrapping my whole like body around this ladder as I'm going up. And I was so terrified. And I was like thinking I mean, I really couldn't focus on anything else other than like climbing up this ladder at this point. But at that moment, I was like, man, jumping off the cliff was the easy part. It was like climbing this now is much, much harder than actually jumping off the cliff, because this is taking way more time, way more energy, way more effort. So finally I like make it to the top, and then it's like you have to, here's the like ladder on the side of the cliff, and then here's the top of the cliff. You have to like somehow like swing your body like up here. And again, I was very out of shape at this point in time, and I'm sure I had been like drinking that day or something. Like, of course I had to have been drinking to jump off this freaking cliff. Like, that's crazy. So finally I like make it up there, and I get like back onto, you know, solid land. And I just remember like touching the earth and just being like, thank you, God, I made it. Like, I actually did this. And looking back on that experience and everything that I went through and all of the fears that came up for me and the physical exertion that came up for me, I could not be more grateful for that experience. That is one of my favorite memories, and especially from that trip. That trip was completely magical, but specifically that experience was really, really powerful for me. And I just think that has been such a metaphor for me, of like finally, you know, whatever the fear is that's coming up, like whether that be like speaking to somebody about how I actually feel, or you know, quitting a job that I can't imagine I would ever be more successful or happy in another place. I realized that as soon as I take that initial plunge, yeah, it's definitely hard, like after you take that plunge, and there are things that are going to come up for you that are going to kind of like throw you for a loop, but you just have to keep going. Like, you have to keep trying, because you were meant to succeed in this life. Like that, you know, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to go through this life and fulfill like whatever it is, our purpose. But there's going to be things that are going to come up for us that are going to try and stop us. But we just have to keep fighting. Like, we have to keep moving through that. We have to move past the fear. And if we can do that, like, we can soar. We can really, really soar. And so I just really wanted to come on tonight and talk about fear and how it is perceived as this negative thing, but can really be used to help us like just succeed. So again, if anybody has any fears that are coming up for them in their life, I mean, I feel like that's something that is pretty common that comes up for us. You know, one thing that someone mentioned to me today about fear was that there's typically more layers underneath whatever it is that you're afraid of. So, definitely take a look at what the different things are that are coming up, because fear is pretty tricky. Like it's like a chameleon, and it can look like something on the surface, but really like there's much more to it. So we have to dig a little bit deeper and try and figure out what exactly it is that's trying to hold us back. So what was there was a quote that I read, and it said like, well, what if I fall? And then the response to that was, what if you soar? So I really want to encourage everyone to, as they're going into this next week, to really take a look at what fears come up for you, and really feel those fears in your body. It's important for us to, find them in our minds and our hearts, but really feel them in our bodies and see what that feels like for us, and try to identify like where that fear is coming from. And most of the time it's not something like tangible, but it is something that is real to us. And even though like it may be irrational, or could never really happen, or whatever you want, whatever story you want to tell yourself about your fear, like just really give that fear some space. Like allow it to just come up and move through you, and really try and look at it. And then once you do that, you can kind of say, okay, fear, now let's do something. Because really we have to take action in our lives, and that's where fear fails, is because fear will paralyze us. Fear will keep us like still. It will stagnate us. It will freeze us where we are. But if we can just kind of like shake that off and move with whatever direction, then we can actually do something with ourselves and with our lives. So that is what I have to say about fear tonight. And I'm really grateful for you listening and watching. And I hope this was helpful for you. Again, if you have any questions or comments that you would like to bring up, I would love to hear that. I would love to talk about it. And if you have anything else that you would like to hear me speak about this week, I'm always open for that. So I'm going to try and be a little bit more structured about the way I'm doing things and have a little bit more flow. But it's been really nice this week having such an organic experience of, this is what's coming up for people in my life today, so I'm going to talk about that. And I feel very strongly that we're all connected, and so if this is coming up for me or those that I care about, then it's definitely got to be coming up for others. So thank you again so much for your time, and get your butt out there, shake it off, and kick that fear to the curb. Use it as fuel so that you can get shit done, because you are amazing and you have so much potential, and you have an amazing purpose that maybe you do know of or don't know of that needs to be fulfilled. And we need you, and we need your light, and we need your love, and we need your heart and spirit. So thank you, Karina. I love you. Thank you, Ronnie. You guys are amazing, and I will see you again here tomorrow. Thanks, everyone. Bye.